Welcome to A Bookish Podcast, and thank you for tuning in for the premiere episode. This podcast is all about books and the people who write them. My goal is to help readers diversify their bookshelves, so I'm sharing the diverse books I read from authors who have been underrepresented in the publishing industry. For the first episode, I got the chance to sit down twice, thanks to technical difficulties, with author Adele Griffin, who published her debut adult novel in June this year. The Favor explores themes of friendship, surrogacy, and non-traditional family building, with an added dash of vintage. I was fortunate to receive a temporary digital advanced reader's copy via NetGalley, and I just loved it. But I'll let Adele tell you about that, and please excuse me while I drop a shameless plug to read the review on my book blog. Alrighty, listeners, are you ready? Please join me in welcoming the author of The Favor, Adele Griffin. Again, thank you for joining me for technically the second time.
Of course, it's my pleasure.
So I'm going to start by congratulating you on The Favor, your newest release that came out in June.
Thank you. I'm so excited about it. It is my first book for adults after a whole career writing for kids.
So what made you want to write for adults after writing so many novels for children?
Yeah, good question. I mean, that was the question I definitely had to ask myself the whole time I was drafting those early drafts, because I loved writing for kids and had been a children's book editor. And then when it came time to sort of think, after 20 some years of writing kids' books, if I wanted to write a book for adults, I returned to a lived experience that was my husband's and my long infertility challenge. And I knew that was really the heart and soul of a book that I would want to share. But I have to tell you, I had to put a few years of just being a mom into my life before I was ready to think about that. I have two boys. They are age 15 and 11. And I started the book about 4 years ago. But, I think it was so meaningful that it was good to just give it its own timeline.
And were you surprised by how well readers and critics have received it?
I was very hopeful because, of course, it's a really deeply personal story. Although it is purely, fiction in terms of this roller coaster plot, the book is about this woman, Nora Hammond, and by day she works in this beautiful thrift store where she sells things that she loves to people in sort of downtown New York City. And then at the end of the day, she goes home, and she and her husband are living not really a fairy tale at all, because they have so much debt, a mountain of debt from all of these failed fertility treatments, and they really can't do it anymore. They're just in their life trying to figure out next steps. And then one day, this woman, Evelyn Elliott, blows into the store, and Evelyn is full of fun and excitement and money. And she buys out the store and she becomes friends with Nora. And there's this bit of difference because Evelyn has so much money, but she sweeps Nora off and they become fast friends. And this friendship becomes a lot more complicated when Evelyn decides that she is going to carry a baby for Nora. So this story is really very much a fiction. This was not my life, but there was a through line through the story that I really wanted to address, which was the fact that we had both of our kids through a surrogate and what that felt like.
And what was that experience like for you?
Well, it was an unusual experience for sure, after many years of really wanting to carry a baby myself. And we have, lots of story in my story that is not part of the fiction. But when we finally landed on the idea of surrogacy, I first want to say we feel very fortunate that we even had this option. And I particularly felt happy because I'm from a very big family with lots of cousins, and I have three brothers, and my husband is from a very small family. So having a little genetic connection through my husband was very meaningful for me, and kind of why we decided to go with surrogacy. But the surrogacy relationship, and mine had none of the drama of the book, but a surrogacy relationship is so unique. You know, you have this very precious thing. You're coming off a time that has been incredibly vulnerable, all of these years of wishing and hoping and dreaming of a family. And suddenly it has moved into this incredibly different direction where somebody else is going to carry this baby for you. For me, it was so bittersweet because on one hand, it was everything I wanted to have a baby. And then on the other hand, I couldn't carry the baby. And so the longing that I felt and the worry and the superstition that I felt around my surrogate's gestation was so extreme. And part of that is what I hope I've layered into my own story. You know, the idea that what if Paris Hilton or what if Kate Middleton were your surrogate, to me feels kind of the way it felt for real, because it felt so aspirational that there was this woman in the world who was carrying my baby, and I never wanted to be anything but the calmest, coziest, best part of her daily life. And at the same time, because my surrogate was many states away, 1,000 miles away, I really had no access to her life. I wasn't living next door. I couldn't check in on her. I didn't know what she had for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I had to sort of rely on what she told me as a trust exercise to feel that things were going well. And I had no idea if things were going well. And so I took that core feeling, that core uncertainty, and I built that feeling into a plot that was very different from my experience, but at the same time felt very real.
Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I feel like writing it's such a vulnerable thing to do, to put that piece of yourself out there into the world. And especially when you're releasing a book, because people, one thing they do is review it and they judge it. And
yes.
A part of it is your story, right? And it's very personal to you. So how do you feel you handled that? Like, were you anxious at all before the first book came out?
Well, I was. And I also thought that thank goodness that social media is a way of saying to people, here's a bit of my story, here's my authentic lived experience, and here's why I wanted to add my story into the mix. So that, of course, if people don't appreciate the story or if they don't like it, I'm very used to reviews. I've had, reviews on my book since 1996 when my first book came out. And at the same time, I did want to impart to anybody who's picking up this book that I have been through it, that we went through many, many years of the fertility challenge, and we understand the stigma. And I went through the surrogacy experience, and we went through many other experiences that didn't make it into the book, but it was not a salacious story. It was not oh, wouldn't this be fun to write about a surrogate? And I've put that up on my Instagram and in Facebook, that I really wanted to share a lot of my own feelings about this, so that nobody could come to the book and say, wow, this woman really has no idea what it's like to, XYZ. So regardless of what you think of the actual book, it's coming from a very deep, real place.
And what would you say was the hardest scene for you to write in the story?
Oh, well, there were lots of scenes that I felt I really had to go deep into thinking about a time that was hard to think about, which in some ways was the loneliness. Infertility is a very lonely road. I say it because even when you have a loving partner and friends and all of the things that I built into Nora's life, probably better than in my own life, it's still excruciating in terms of the feeling of being all alone. And so that was one piece of the story that I felt I had to be very watchful and because you don't want the reading of your book to be some sort of harrowing experience. And this is a very warm-hearted, surrogacy positive, non-traditional road to family positive story. But writing about that loneliness was hard for me. And I would say the second piece of it was that there's a scene in the NICU, in the neonatal intensive care unit. My oldest was also in the NICU, and that experience is so extreme, all those tiny, fragile babies. And I felt that I really lived it again when I thought about, the ventilators and the primary caregivers. But I also give a shout out to all of the nurses who were my baby's primary caregiver, because it echoes a theme that I think is really important about this book, which is that in this journey, there are communities of women who step forward for other women and are so strong and surround them. And I felt this so much with my surrogate and her community. And then again, in the NICU with my primary nurse caregivers, that it felt like a related experience. And I wanted that to truly come forward in a book, especially a book that deals with the subject of surrogacy, because there are many books, I think, that take on that idea in what I would consider just like a little bit more of a thriller, a kind of a more salacious or wild idea, or a dystopian idea of surrogacy. And that's fine. It's great to have all different kinds of books. But with my book, I really wanted to anchor it in the idea of women surrounding other women in a time of great need.
Did you just rely on your own personal experience, or did you do any further research for the story?
Well, there's so much that's here and available now. I thought in the beginning, and I love this question because I thought I'll have to go deep, deep into my memory and think about all of these feelings. But then I also went back onto forums, and 20 years ago, none of these things were really available. I think there was one Facebook group that everyone was too shy to talk on, but I did go back onto the forums and found communities like Fertility Now, and there's so many podcasts, and just remembering how this felt and being a listener on podcasts were very beneficial to me, because it felt like, here's the community. Fertility is not a phase or a trend. Fertility is just, unfortunately, this club that people end up in. And 20 years ago, it was in some ways very much the same. But I was so happy to connect with all of the community that feels like it's taken root and grown stronger in the years since I first connected on wherever I was, MySpace, or just these small little siloed connections. But Fertility Out Loud is another great thing for people who are struggling, and so that was so gratifying to realize that women had in this interim really built up a lot of community.
And how do you feel now that your book is a part of that community? Because I know for myself personally, struggling with fertility, but also just from the womanhood side of it, like, it's not a topic that's really explored very often. So how do you feel that so many women have gravitated to it and really found a safe space in it?
I'm really very glad, because it's such an antidote to loneliness. And I felt in the time when Eric and I, my husband, were in it, that we just couldn't talk to anybody. I barely wanted to talk to my mom. I didn't talk to my friends. I didn't talk to my relatives. I felt very stigmatized by it. We felt utterly silent in it. And now, with this opportunity to put my voice into the world in the fiction that The Favor is, but also in my actual story, which is in many ways a different story. We created our kids. We used donor eggs. Our children are half siblings. We had lots of ups and downs along the way to our family. And I was very sure that I wanted to be so transparent with it, because at the time that I was going through it, I had doctors saying things to me like, you never have to say to anybody that you use donor eggs. You don't have to say to anybody. You don't have to tell this story, as though it were coded to some kind of personal shame that I should feel about my body, that my body couldn't do this. And I felt like I I want to not feel shame about a family that I am so proud of. And I'm proud of the hard work that it took to get them. And I want to tell them this story in celebration and in triumph, that this is how we got to you boys. This is what mattered to us, being this family, and to take all four corners of that experience and say, here is how I show up. Here is what happened in my family. And that to me feels like, let me join the community of people who are in non-traditional families and who are living the dream, but the dream didn't look like the thing maybe they thought it was when they were, 12 years old, thinking that it was all going to go one way. Well, mine off-roaded, but it's wonderful. I'm so happy that I got this family, and I'm happy to tell this story, and I don't feel shame about it. So I'm really thrilled and grateful that I get to add my voice and I get to add my book to a bookshelf.
And I personally love all the photos you share of your family. I actually showed one to my husband and he was like, those are some dapper looking young men.
They're so dapper, and they're just the pleasure and joy of raising. I guess it's like when we realized, oh, I'm not going to be able to carry. Oh, I'm not going to be able to use my genetics. Okay, so this, so that. But we absorbed these disappointments, and they feel in some ways like someone else's scrapbook, because what I knew was that I wanted to raise kids with this guy. That's what I knew. And I didn't know how it was going to happen. And now that they're here, I don't actually think about how it happened, because they're just here. They're just my boys that I pack lunches for, and I pick them up and they go climbing and they go hiking and we go to the beach. And I'm so in the story of their lives. It's their story. It's not my story.
Are you interested in advertising on A Bookish Podcast? Prices start at just $10 Canadian, and ads can range from 15 to 30 seconds. You can send me one you have, or let me make one for you. Email me at megan@thedupuysshow.com to learn more. So is there anything that you edited out of the book?
Well, yes, I did edit out a big chapter, and I had approached my editor because I thought maybe I'll put it back in for the paperback. And it was all about Nora's relationship with her mother and those early days. And I wanted to take this field trip, and it kind of digresses from the book. And she and Jacob on her birthday go back to her hometown, and she thinks about how her mom was so important to her and all the things that they didn't have, and how they were this little team. And I think it was sort of a beautiful short story, but it made the book catches speed, and it becomes really propulsive, and we're hurtling down the pace in terms of the fact that Evelyn, that there's this pregnancy. And I off-roaded to tell this other story, and I loved it so much. But it was kind of one of those kill your darlings, where it was like, you have to kill chapters 26 through 28 because it's not actually taking us anywhere. But I loved it. Maybe I'll put it on my website.
Right? As a little fun sneak peek.
Yeah, because I just loved it. I was like, but this is their story, and this is how they sewed, and this is where they went, and this is how she wore costumes to school. And I got really invested in Nora's childhood. It was a fun thing to write about that didn't really make sense for the story. But that's the beauty of writing, I think, just exploring other little pockets of plot and character.
Right? And other different little facets of the world you created.
Yes, I was inventing her street and inventing her house and making up a best friend and a crabby neighbor. And then they went roller skating, and it was this whole thing. And I was like, what a lovely day for Nora and Jacob and me.
Right? What's the main thing that you'd like the readers to take away from your book?
The main thing I'd like readers to take away from my book is that it is a celebration. It is a celebration of non-traditional family. It's a celebration of long relationships, of friendships, of all of the things that I think are so important to put together for the plot that I felt that was the way I was going to talk about something that is hard to talk about, that it is a cozy, warm, connected way in to what is possibly considered a difficult subject. That was how I wanted to do it. And that ultimately this book is a celebration.
I love that. So, are you friends with any other authors? And how do you find that they help you become a better writer?
Oh, I love that question because we moved from Brooklyn a couple of years ago and we live in California now. And I thought, oh, I'm sad to leave so many of my writer friends because I'd lived there for my whole adult life. But when I came to California, I made lots of new writer friends. And they're really wonderful because we're all each other's beta readers. We read the early drafts of very important, I think, to have a very friendly reader on an early draft. It is such a raw material. It's so close to your heart. I feel anyway, very strange and uncertain whenever I give something that's like hot off the printer into the hands or of anybody. So to have a writing community, to have a community of people who are that very soft landing, to me is the best. It's also the writing advice that I give, like have those people, have that community. And in my community, I've known a lot of people who have been pivoting from young adult and kids books into adult books. Rebecca Searle and Jen Smith just last year pivoted into, well, longer than just last year, but just very recently have pivoted into adult books. And it's such a specific thing to leave behind books that are about 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds and start writing about people who are in their 30s and 40s. I mean, it's a massive jump in terms of voice. So I was really happy to know a couple of people who had gone before me and done that.
So, how did you find that publishing your first book changed your writing process when it came to the rest of them?
Oh, well, publishing my first book in adult was a long road. I think voice was really hard, even though here was my real story or bits of it anyway. And here is this adult person, a person in Nora Hammond that I could go out and have a sandwich with and is a peer of mine. And it seemed like this would be so easy. I'm just going to write a story. She's in a fertility story. I lived a fertility story. I had such a sense that this was going to be a piece of cake. And it turned out to be not at all that. It was really, really hard to find voice. And maybe it was because when you write in the voice of a 16-year-old, and I had been writing that age for many, many years, I think it just a little bit hardened around the edges for me that I leave the end of a young adult book and my 16-year-old has her whole life in front of her. Wherever I've taken her through in a plot, she is now going to be maybe graduating high school, or she has broken up with her boyfriend, or somebody close to her has died, whatever it is. She still has the whole rest of her life. So there's this optimistic note that you leave a book on. But writing for adults, a lot of decisions have already been made in that character's life. I came to a character who already had a ton of debt. She'd been married for a lot of years. She had a dog. She had preferences. She had a job. She took she was a commuter. She had all of these things. And I felt a little bit overwhelmed by writing about a person in the middle of her life and trying to get a hold of what was important to her and what were the things, because in young adult, it's just like homework, parents, siblings, friends. And so I kept sort of not understanding her priorities. I rewrote The Favor many, many times just to try to find this adult voice.
Speaking of young adult, what was an early experience that you had where you learned that language had power?
Oh, I love this question. Well, my father knew a lot of languages. My dad knew Korean and French and German. He was a linguist and he had books and books and books all over the house. And he had a book, A Grimm's Fairy Tale, in the original German. And it was this big, heavy, thick, sort of smelled like must. And I loved it. And I latched onto it when I was like 5 years old. And I dragged it around with me because I wanted to impress everybody with this idea that I knew German, that I didn't even know it was German. It was a language that I didn't understand. And it had all these really scary pictures in it. And I'd take it to the playground and I would just hope that somebody would be like, who's that fascinating kindergartner reading that?
I love that.
Difficult book. And I know it was so pretentious and who even knows what I was thinking, but I do remember the feeling that this book is powerful. This book is a lot of things. This book is scary. And maybe in that moment, there was something in me that was like, I want to write something fierce and mysterious and interesting. I want to have ownership of this thing. It's such a strong memory of mine that I can't help but think that it inspired some kind of feeling to connect with words.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. That's such a precious memory. If you didn't write, what do you think you'd do for work?
Well, I'd probably be getting fired from lots of jobs because I can't even imagine what I would do well besides hugging dogs, and eating cupcakes. I love. I'm from a family of teachers, though, seriously, and I had grown up with my mom's sister. My godmother was a librarian. And for a year, I went to a school where she was a librarian, and I loved it so much. So I do feel like the world of teachers and librarians is a world that felt very familiar to me. And as a kids book writer, going back into schools the way I did to be the author for Author Day or to do book fairs, that was always a very comforting place. So in a way, I did feel like I was a teacher for a lot of years, the reading teacher or something, the storyteller teacher, and had a really lovely, happy life there.
I love that. Either way, you're surrounded by books.
Yeah, that's right. And cares.
I love that. So, one thing that I've read, aside from pull quotes and writing about yourself in the third person, you love bakery cakes. And so do I.
I do.
So I want to know what some of your faves are.
I just ordered a strawberry rhubarb pie this morning because I have some people coming over. And there's a bakery called Sweet Lady Jane that I have quite a crush on that bakery. There's so many good bakeries around here, even though I can make a cake from scratch, no problem. And I love to do that, or cookies. I just, preheating an oven is like my favorite thing. But summertime is very hot here. So I've been leaning more into pies and some ice cream cakes. My very favorite cake has got to be the traditional yellow birthday cake with the fudge icing.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yes, it's like the golden cake or something.
Yes.
It's not vanilla.
Yes. I mean, I love a Duncan Hines. Don't get me wrong. I'm a military kid. Duncan Hines was like, your aunt and uncle. It was always in the kitchen.
Right?
So yeah, so that's delicious. And oh gosh, the other day we were talking about easy bake ovens. Did you ever have an easy bake?
Oh my gosh, I did. I totally had an easy bake oven. I think it's still in my mom's basement somewhere.
I mean, I remember the feeling of frosting an easy bake oven cake and being like, I guess I'm a chef now. I'm so talented. I just made this cake. It was like the best invention for making people feel like empowered.
It really was. I wanted to open my own bakery and everything.
I know. I was like, don't worry about the fact that it's barely edible.
Right? Don't worry about the fact that it was cooked by a light bulb.
Don't that's on you if you think it tastes bad, because I'm the chef of the house. Like, right? Enjoy.
I'm like, here you go. And all for you.
You're welcome.
Exactly. Oh, I love it. Oh, Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me again. I am so sorry about the technical difficulties last time.
So fun. It's like a little chat. And I changed my room so that it would feel fresh.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Oh, it's fun. It's really fun to talk about this book. I love it. It's new in the world. Even just talking about it feels strange to have the words coming out of my mouth about this book because it's just so new. So it's a joy for me. So thank you.
Oh, no, of course. My pleasure. Are you going to talk with any book clubs or anything like that in the future?
Yes, I'm actually talking on an accessories podcast where I
Ooh.
can talk a bit about the vintage angle of the book, and that will be fun. And I do have a book club lined up for the fall, which is filled with all of my old high school buddies. So I'm loving that.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Right? You can stay connected to people forever. And they approached me and they're like, "Hey, you want to just jump on a Zoom and talk about this book? We've all read it."
That is so awesome. I really hope you make an Instagram post about it.
I definitely will. I'm all about those posts. I think it's such a great way to be connected to people. It's how we met.
Right? I was going to say, I love Instagram for that, especially the whole bookstagram aspect.
I absolutely find so much joy and pleasure in always knowing when the new books are out or what people's favorites are or adding my own stack. It's just, I find it to be a huge source of joy because this to me is like where it lives for me that feels the most fun. I go to Facebook for pictures of my family and I go to Instagram for books.
Right? Exactly. And I love that there's a whole book community on Instagram because I'm pretty sure the people in my real life, they're like, Megan, I don't care about your books. After a certain amount of time, they're like, Megan, can you talk about something else?
I care deeply about your books. We're here.
Right? I'm like, okay, you know what? Then I heard about Bookstagram. I was like, well, I found my people.
I know it's true. You find all your people here, and you're like, I actually want to read. I get all my book recs from Instagram, and I just
Right?
even let people make beautiful, bookstagram photos, and it's like, oh, my book next to a glass of lemonade. That's beautiful.
Right? Oh, the photos are one of my favorite parts.
Oh, people are so talented, right? Like the way they can compose these moments out of
Right?
books, kind of capture the feeling of reading the book. I think that is a real talent.
It really is. I love it. And I love reading everybody's reviews and seeing what everybody loved and what aspects of characters they loved.
Oh, 100%. And when people get really, really wild about a book, I've had a group of my friends all at the same time. All of us were reading Yellowface. And everybody was like, this is the book. It's a very publishing book. And a lot of my friends used to be editors or, there's this connection to publishing houses. And it was like this love affair, just like instant, and it was fun to be part of it, like virtual book club, very impromptu, just like we're all in it. We're all in this book right now.
I love that. Yellowface is on my to be read list.
So fun. It's just so fun, that book.
The premise of it sounded so interesting. I was like, yes.
I think you'll love it. I think you'll just love it. It's just so unpredictable and it's so funny and you have no idea where you're going. It's all the things that I love. The surprise, and she's very young, the author, and I feel like I love connecting with a book that feels infused with a very young, youthful energy. Just is exciting. It's an exciting way to know a very young person through this smart, sharply observed book.
Right? I love it. Oh, well, thank you again so much for taking the time. You can find Adele's books via online retailers. Amazon, Indigo, Barnes & Nobles, that kind of thing. You can also support local and grab a copy from your local bookstore or check out your local library. You can learn more about Adele and her work online at www.adelegrifin.com. And while you're there, you should sign up for her newsletter. You can also find her on Instagram and give her a follow at the handle ADELEGRIFFIN. Adele can also be found on TikTok and Facebook with the handles ADELEGRIFFINBOOKS. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening to the first episode of A Bookish Podcast. It truly means the world to me, and I really hope you hit the subscribe button to tune in weekly. Yep, surprise! Enough interest was generated thanks to you all, and it has already been such a blessing. So honestly, thank you all incredibly so much. I would also like to give a special shout out to Musito Music for creating our intro and outro song. It really sets the tone, no pun intended, for the episodes, and I truly, truly appreciate all of your efforts. Thank you again so much. Next week, tune in for my sit-down with author Anne William. We talk about her Wild About You series, pen names, self-publishing, and of course, dessert. Here's a sneak peek of what's to come.
And I think a lot of people who do have passions and hobbies, they give up when it's hard, and you kind of just have to decide, like, this is what I want to do regardless of the outcome, regardless of like success isn't necessarily being a bestseller. Success is defined as literally just doing it and being proud of what you produce. So
thanks again for listening, friends. Please share your feedback with me. Email, DM, voice message on Anchor. The choice is yours. And please don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter and the show. I really appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you next week. Too far away, you say? You can connect with me at www.thedupushow.com/DUPUISSHOWREADS. I hope you have a wonderful week and be kind to yourself. I'm super guilty for being hard on myself, and I feel like I'm not alone in that. So this is our reminder that we're doing the best we can, and that's really all we can do. See you next week.